Hello everyone, I hope you are doing well. Today we are going to start with a very interesting chapter in our history books, which is from hunting, gathering to growing food. In the previous chapter we have learned about how the early humans settled around rivers in order to find food and their basic needs of survival. So in this chapter we are going to discuss the following things. We are going to learn how the early man, the early humans, they moved from one place to another in search of survival tools such as food, light, source of energy, etc. Then how do we know about these people? For example, it was a very long time ago, it was thousands of years ago. What are the proofs that they existed? We are going to learn that how do we know about these people in detail. Then what were the places that they chose to live in and why did they choose such places to live in. Then we are going to discuss about finding fire. Now fire is a very important source of energy even in our era, so it must have been really important in the previous era as well. So how was fire discovered? Where did it started? We are going to learn about that. What were the sites where the early human lived and why are they important? What is the importance of these sites in today's world? Then the names and dates of these places, what were the dates, how are they linked and what is the importance of these dates in today's era. About changing environment, that how the environment shifted from the early humans to the early ages till now. We always talk about the environment change, global change, then how is it affecting us, how is it affecting the creatures around us. We are going to learn about that. So we are going to see the beginning of farming and herding. So in today's time as well, agriculture is the basic and the most important source of income for most of the people in India. So how did the early human discovered farming and herding and what role did it play in their survival? Then we learn about domestication. Domestication is a very vast topic, but we will see how domestication changed the lives of the people living thousands of years ago. Then how they discovered a new way of life using these methods, about storing of animals, finding out about first farmers and herders towards a settled life. How did they develop a life and settled into it? Then we will see a closer look on living and dying in Mehergarh. What is Mehergarh? What is the site of Mehergarh and how people lived and settled, survived and died over there. So in this chapter, we are going to see how the human species evolved from the early era to the date we are living right now. So human beings in the earliest past were not the same as they are now in the present time. We always say and we always hear people around us saying that we are the predecessors of monkeys, that monkeys are our ancestors. Why do we say that? Because we are the lineage, we are the carriers of the same ancestors, of the same line which they were. So the human species evolved from the early humans by the monkeys or by the apes. It is believed that our earth is 4.5 billion years old. There was no proof of plants, animals or mankind at that time. Plants, animals, mankind, humans came and were born on this planet much later. Early man lived as early as 2 million years ago. That means that it is even after 2 billion years that the people and the mankind was born on earth. The early man or the early humans were nomads. What is a nomad? Nomads are people who move from one place to another in search of food, shelter and water. They used to look like gorillas, as we compared earlier, that we are the generation or we are the predecessors of the species of monkeys or gorillas. So the earlier nomads looked like gorillas. The modern man, with all its development in various fields, is a result of gradual development and a continuous process of development. For example, you see that there is a species which developed so much that it loses all the gestures, all the features of the previous species of the same lineage. It happened to humans as well. There were gorillas, there were apes, there were monkeys, and gradually development took place, the natural environment changed a bit, and as a result we are living as humans today. So the earliest people, why were they on the move? The early people, the humans, lived in the subcontinent as early as 2 million years ago. They were hunters and gatherers. Now, why do we call them hunters and gatherers? We discussed earlier that they were nomads. They were constantly on the move from one place to another in search of food. Life was not the same as we have today. We can just go to a grocery store and buy our food. But it was not the same for the nomads or our ancestors. They had to make their food, they had to find their food, look for their food, and they had to work hard for their food. So, they moved from one place to another, they migrated from one place to another in search of food. So, when they found their food, it was in the form of animals, fish, birds, fruits, roots, trees, etc. Okay? So, in order to keep and store that food with them so that it would help them in the long run, they started hunting animals, birds and fish, hunting other living creatures so that they can feed themselves, as well as they started gathering it at the same time, because it is important to store the food as well. You cannot always go on the move and hunt something. You have to store something for the future. We do the same thing. When we go and buy food from the grocery store, we buy it in bulk and store it for the rest of the month. So they did the same thing. They hunted, they gathered and they stored it with themselves. Now, the reasons for the movement of hunters and gatherers were that they needed constant supply of plants and animals. That is, they were in need of plants and animals to survive, to feed themselves. So, to look for food, they started moving from one place to another. They followed animals. So, what does it mean by following animals? The early humans moved from one place to another because they had to hunt food. They had to hunt animals in order to feed themselves. So, wherever the animals go, the mankind went in order to feed themselves. Then, in search of water. Now, food is important. The second most important thing for survival is water. You can't live 3 days without water. So, the humans, the early humans, the people moved from one place to another in order to find water. Then they moved seasonally. For example, if there is a cold weather in a given region and if there is a hot weather in a given region, the people migrate from there. For example, in Canada, it is quite cold. So, people are migrating towards warmer places, right? And when it is very hot in Rajasthan or Gujarat, people migrate towards hill stations in order to keep themselves accommodated according to the weather. So, they moved seasonally as per the change in weather conditions. How do we know about these people? The biggest question is that we are discussing that the early humans, they fed on animals, they moved in search of water, they moved in search of food and shelter and seasonally. But what are the proof? What proof do we have that these people existed and how do we know about their practices? So, the answer to this question is that archaeologists have found some of the things used by hunters and gatherers. So, who are archaeologists? These are the people who study history. These are the people who study the things that were found which were buried underneath the earth millions and millions of years ago, which give us proof of life. So, many archaeologists around the world, they studied and they found a lot of tools, lot of things which were related to hunters and gatherers. For example, the tools that they used to use in order to hunt animals, the tools that they used in order to cook food, to survive, the tools or weapons they used in order to keep themselves safe, to safeguard their loved ones and the people around them. So, some of the pictures of these tools are given here, as you can see, and you can relate that these are few things that we have come across in different kind of books and movies. Now the question is, these tools, archaeologists found it, but what did the hunters and gatherers, what did the early humans use it for? As we discussed, that they used to cut meat, bone, scrape bark, the bark from the trees, and hides, animal skins, to chop fruits and roots. Now, the early humans used animal skin to keep themselves warm. The scrape of the trees, the bark of the trees, to build their shelter, to protect them from seasonal changes, from harsh winters to harsh summers, and to cut meat and bone in order to prepare their food.